Welcome everyone to CoasterGuy23 review number 1. This will be my first video in what I hope to be a long series of roller coaster reviews. All these reviews will follow the exact same format. I've been really looking forward to making this series and I'm hoping to churn a lot of these out over the next couple months. Without further ado, why not start off this series strong by making review number 1 one of the most well-regarded and hyped up coasters of the last 7 years, Steel Vengeance at Cedar Point. Starting off with some of the more boring general stats, Steel Vengeance opened in 2018, making 2025 its 8th operating season. Steel Vengeance is currently in its prime of operation, where I would no longer consider it new, but it has not at all shown any signs of aging. This ride is located at Cedar Point in Sandusky, Ohio. It was manufactured by Rocky Mountain Construction using their RMC iBox track and RMC swing axle trains. RMC iBox track with RMC swing axle trains makes for one of the glossiest smooth coaster experiences out there. I'll discuss more later, but I definitely am higher on RMC's trains than most people. I find the bottom of them rather comfortable, the shin guards don't really bother me, and the lap bar makes for a comfortable airtime experience. Steel Vengeance, along with Twisted Timbers, were the first RMCs to debut the swing axle trains, and they run fantastic. Some of the best trains in the industry, in my opinion. The specialty box is for ride models that have a defining feature, such as a dive drop or tilt track. Steel Vengeance does not have one of those, so it is left blank. And just for documentation, it has a height of 205 feet, a speed of 75 miles per hour, and a track length of 5,740 feet. As we will see later, a top speed of 75 miles per hour with a track length of 5,740 feet makes for a very long and satisfying ride experience. Overall, the scale of Steel Vengeance is good. Now, let's get into the meat of what I'll actually be reviewing with this coaster. On the next slide, you will see Steel Vengeance's vertical force chart. What you see in front of you is Steel Vengeance's full list of elements in order from start to finish. The start and stop time indicates where on the force chart this element is located. I encourage you to jump around this video and use the force chart to identify the forces exerted by each individual element. I identify an element as a distinct and noticeable force change. Some of you may not like that, but it's the easiest way to break down forces by element. For example, as you can see in front of you, elements 13 and 14 are both Steel Vengeance's double up. I consider this two elements because you are getting two distinct moments of airtime separated by a moment of positive force. Some of you may not like that because you're used to elements being separated by the track rising in the air, but to me, it makes a lot more sense to break it down by force changes. Each element is separated into 3 main categories: airtime, inversions, and maneuvers. I imagine most of you watching this video are familiar with airtime and inversions. But just in case you're not familiar, an airtime element is an element that makes you rise out of your seat and into your restraint. These include hills of all shapes, outer bank turns, drops, top hats, and a lot more. Inversions are elements that make the rider go upside down, such as loops, dive loops, zero-G rolls, zero-G stalls, and once again, a lot more. Then finally, maneuvers is the word I came up with to describe any element whose intent is not airtime nor an inversion. These are just meant to be fun and to contort your body in different ways. These include overbank turns, stangle dives, snaps, S-bends, hammerhead turns, you get the point. If you're new to coasters and don't understand a word I just said, stick with me, we're going to watch a POV and break down all these elements. Getting back into Steel Vengeance's elements specifically, it has 4 inversions, 3 maneuvers, and 21 airtime moments. Its 4 inversions are 3 0-G rolls and 1 0-G stall, and its 3 maneuvers include a high banking turn, 1 overbank turn, and a stangle dive. Finally, its 21 airtime moments are just too numerous for me to list. This brings its total element count to 28, which is rather insane. D2B is a metric that I made that stands for drop to brakes. It's a metric that I made that shows how long in seconds the roller coaster is from the first pickup of speed to the final brake run. This is obtained from the force chart. Steel Vengeance has a D2B of 81.44 seconds, which is extremely above average. To quickly summarize this page, Steel Vengeance is significantly above average in both number of elements and D2B ride time. This is the force chart of which all the data on the previous slide was sourced from. Each positive force peak indicates the start of a new element. Just to break down a couple elements for you guys, here is the end of the first drop and the start of the speed hill. Here is the end of the speed hill and the start of the top hat. Here is the valley between the top hat and the outer bank turn. Pretty simple, right? You can use the start and stop times of the elements on the previous page to identify any element within this force chart. This force chart will be important later for when we determine how much airtime each individual airtime moment gives. We can already see based on this chart that elements like the first drop, top hat, and outer bank turn are going to deliver extreme amounts of sustained ejector airtime. Especially towards the end of this force chart, you can see a lot of spikiness between positives and negative moments. This indicates a lot of ejector quote-unquote pops, which is something you just love to see. So with that said, let's dive into the POV and grade out all these different moments on Steel Vengeance. Starting with the lift, it's up at about a 45-degree angle and is one of the loudest lift hills you have ever heard in your entire life. RMC definitely did not intend for this and fix it on their future swing axle train coasters such as Iron Gwazi, Air Force One, and Wildcat, who have much quieter lift hills. Now we enter our first element, the first drop. Like most first drops, this element hits a lot harder in the back. Steel Vengeance's first drop hits a max negative G of minus 0.8 Gs and an airtime score of minus 43.63. If you don't know what that score means, I highly recommend watching my roller coaster airtime analysis video, which is linked in the description. To briefly summarize that video here, this score is the area above the vertical force chart for each individual negative G moment and represents the amount of upward momentum the element generates on your body. 43.63 is one of the best scores for a first drop that I have personally measured. This drop can have a little bit more whip, but just the negative G value and how long it's sustained makes it one of the top drops I've ever experienced. Element 2 is a speed hill with an airtime score of negative 7.45. Believe it or not, this element actually hits nearly minus 1 G of negative force. However, that negative 1 G is held for such a short amount of time, not even a tenth of a second, that you really don't feel it when you're riding. It still serves as a nice little airtime boost though, and kind of serves as a precursor of the two elements to come. Element 3 is what everyone calls the top hat, which is really just a big airtime hill that had to be reconfigured to fit the original layout of Mean Streak. This element gives over 1 full second of airtime with an airtime score of 74.14. 74.14 is the third highest airtime score I have ever given any element, and it deserves it, as it is one of the most pure moments of sustained ejector that I have ever experienced on a roller coaster. However, it is somehow one-upped by element number 4, which is this beautiful outer bank turn, coming in with an airtime score of a whopping 97.06. This is, bar none, the best airtime moment I have ever experienced. During this element, you can feel the train simultaneously diving downward and turning, delivering one constant fluid ejector airtime moment. It still to this day baffles me how RMC was able to make the transition into the outer bank turn so smooth. RMC deserves all the credit for coming up with these, as other manufacturers have caught on and these have become, what I believe, the best singular element for generating airtime. And this, in my opinion, is the best element on Steel Vengeance. Element 5 is what I call a step up. This is basically just the front half of a double up, or more formally, an airtime hill where the elevation you end at is higher than where you started. This is another ejector pop, just like the speed hill, with an airtime score of 11.47. As you'll see as we continue, there are a lot of these on this ride. This element's airtime score being in the double digits really shows that even though this is a shorter airtime moment, you are still really going to feel that uplifting sensation into your lap bar. This is something that Steel Vengeance does really well, as it ensures all these little ejector pops still hit and that you can feel the sensation of airtime. Element 6 is our first inversion, 0G Roll 1. In my opinion, this is the best 0G roll on Steel Vengeance. As you approach it from the step up, you can really begin to see how tight this roll exactly is. Then in one fluid motion after the step up, you rise up doing this beautiful roll right into a right hand turn. This roll is really fluid, and even though it ends a lot higher than what it started, it still feels like you get really good speed through it, even in the back rows. I just love the fluidness of this element. Element 7 is this high bank turn maneuver. This is really the first and only element on Steel Vengeance that I would say really feels like filler. I would have just preferred this element to have a little bit more bank like an overbank, or have a little bit of wave to it so you could maybe get some airtime on it. But as it stands right now, it really just kind of doesn't do much. Element number 8 is this 0G stall that goes underneath the lift hill. This is my overall favorite inversion on Steel Vengeance. Before my first ride, I really was not expecting to like this inversion as I prefer the more drawn out stalls. However, while this is ultimately more of a cutback, it still has that fluidness of an RMC 0G stall. I think this element found that perfect balance of snap and fluidity. I also love how on the entry, it kind of feels like you get pointed more upward toward the sky, then all of a sudden it's just boom, boom, and you're in and out of that inversion. I just love the creativity behind this inversion, and once again, hats off to RMC for making this inversion work in this weird space. Element 9, we have our step down, which is extremely similar in forces to the step up. Its airtime score is nearly identical with a 12.05, only 0.5 off the step up. I probably slightly prefer the step up just because of the entry into the 0G roll, but on the step down you can definitely feel the train pick up speed, which is something the step up cannot say. Element 7, we have the step up mid-course. Unlike the previous step up, This element is a lot more pronounced, featuring a much steeper angle of incline as you enter. This creates a much longer moment of airtime, especially in the front rows. The airtime score reflects that, with a 29.7. Once again, RMC could have opted for a much more straightforward entry into the mid-course brake run. But instead, they got into their bag and delivered us this beautiful moment of what I would call moderate ejector, with a peak force of negative 0.7 Gs lasting for about half a second. This is the first of many moderate ejector moments. Elements 11 and 12 are the mid-course brake run entry and exit. I'm combining these elements into two because they almost feel the exact same, and whichever one delivers more really just depends on what rail you sit in. In the front, the entry will deliver more. In the back, the exit will deliver more. My force data was taken in the back, so the exit hits a little bit harder than the entry. The entry has an airtime score of 13.94, and the exit has an airtime score of 14.87. Pretty similar, but the exit does hit a little bit harder in this case. Elements 13 and 14 are the front half and back half of this double up. On all double ups, the second half will almost always have more air just because the pitch change is greater. In the front, the first half of the double up will hit a little bit harder, but in the back, this is undoubtedly the weakest airtime moment on the ride with an airtime score of only 4.6. The second half of the double up, however, is a really nice moment of moderate ejector with an airtime score of 25.28. Element 15 is this twisted hill. Once again, I love the creativity of this element as it fakes an outer bank turn only to twist you right back inside into the structure. The outer bank is held long enough to give a really good moment of airtime, with a score of 29.32, fitting it into the moderate ejector category. This is one of the underrated standout moments on this ride for me. The air delivers and it's unique. Element 16 is this overbank turn inside the structure. This is definitely a better maneuver than the high bank turn earlier, as you can feel the steepness of the turn inside the structure and you fear for the loss of your hands. Good speed is maintained all the way through this maneuver as well. Element 17 is 0G roll number 2. This is my second favorite of the rolls on Steel Vengeance and my third favorite overall inversion. I just love the fluidness of these RMC 0G rolls. I also love how you exit the structure during this one as well. Elements 18 and 19 are Bunny 1 and Bunny 2. I almost feel bad calling these bunny hills because with airtime scores of 23.11 and 21.86, there's nothing really bunny about them. When comparing these to bunnies on other coasters, Steel Vengeance's bunnies absolutely decimate them. It is just not common for bunny hills to score above 20. Both of these moments last about 0.3 seconds and both hit negative 1 G. Just insanity. There's more of these bunnies to come too, so stay tuned. Element 20 is this wave turn here inside the structure. This is what the high bank turn earlier in the ride could have been. Rather than another uneventful maneuver, RMC was able to turn this turn into yet another ejector pop. This one has an airtime score of 15.25. When you're up on this turn, you can definitely see the outward curvature that causes the airtime that you receive. Element 21 is the third and final 0G roll, and this is definitely my least favorite inversion on Steel Vengeance. This also leads to my one semi-legitimate gripe with this ride. All the other 0G rolls are so fluid, but the exit of this one, the transition going into the Stangle dive is a little bit unpleasant. Rotating one way rapidly and rotating the other rapid way is always a recipe for a nice little jerk. I have a simple way that RMC could have possibly fixed this. As I discussed previously, we know that Steel Vengeance does not have a traditional RMC 0G stall. To prevent the rapid change in rotation direction after the 0G roll, it could have been replaced with an in-structure 0G stall. That would have got rid of this sloppy transition, and the stall itself would have been absolutely diabolical. Maybe it's not possible from an engineering standpoint, but if it could have been done, it definitely would have been an improvement over this roll that is currently there now. Element 22 is this in-structure Stangle dive. As I said, the transition into this element is not the best, but just like the overbank, you can definitely feel the steepness at which you are banking. Plus, the exit of the Stangle dive has some nice controlled whip to it as well. Now comes my second favorite part of all of Steel Vengeance, elements 23 through 28. These are aptly named Bunny 3, Bunny 4, Bunny 5, Bunny 6, Bunny 7, and Brake Hop. With these hills being so small, you would think that maybe they don't deliver, but just like the rest of Steel Vengeance, they take you by surprise when they absolutely hit. I'll just list the airtime scores of these in sync with the video. 17.6, 10.94, 17.89, 9.75, 0.61, 3.89. Bunny 3 and 5 definitely hit the hardest, followed by 4 and 6, and then 7 and the Brake Hop don't really do much. When you're already 70 plus seconds into a ride, Bunnies 3 through 6 have absolutely no business being at or near the double digits, and yet they are. 3 through 6 all have at least a minimum G of greater than minus 0.5, 3 and 5 hold for 0.2 seconds, whereas 4 and 6 hold for 0.1 seconds. Sure, 7 and the Brake Hop don't do much, but the others make this stretch of airtime hills just absolutely amazing. That wraps up our element by element analysis. Here is a recap for all the scores for all 21 airtime moments on Steel Vengeance. As you can see, our outer bank turn and top hat are going to be our out of this world sustained ejector moments, with the first drop also reaching near that category. Then we have our moderate ejector moment, which is our step up into the mid course, Bunny 1 and Bunny 2, the second half the double up and the twisted hill. These all last about 0.5 seconds. And then obviously we have a ton of ejector pops. Out of 21 airtime moments, there are only 3 that I can say don't deliver. That's a very high success rate for a ride with this many airtime moments and is this long. Combining all the different airtime scores for all the moments yields a total score of 484.45. Not to spoil all my other reviews, but there's really only one other coaster I've ridden that's even in the galaxy of that. Using the force chart, I also determined that 17.22 seconds out of the 81.44 D to B time is spent under 0G. Keep in mind that this is just for under 0G, as I only constitute airtime as something under 0G. I don't really like that floater stuff. Overall, Steel Vengeance has a great mix of sustained, moderate, and ejector pops, and it leads to what I believe is the most balanced and complete airtime experience I've had on any roller coaster. The way I grade my coasters is on these 15 categories that I have grouped together. This is what myself and I think a lot of other enthusiasts look for when grading out a roller coaster. Notice how I have these tiles laid out from high priority to low priority. To the left are the things that I care about the most in a coaster, and to the right are the things I care about the least. This priority setup is completely unique to me, and everybody is going to lay out these 15 tiles differently based on what they care about most. Since this is the first of these reviews, I'll explain some of the tiles that may be less familiar to everyone watching this video. And I'll do that as I go through and score Steel Vengeance on all 15 of these categories. We'll start out on the low priority things for me. First up here is theming. I'm putting Steel Vengeance there because it at least does have a story with Blackjack, Digger, and Chess going after Maverick, but the story is just not conveyed that well, and it's not really present except for a couple posters in the queue lines, and the average person does not know it's there, but it at least does have a story, so I'm going to give it a little bit of benefit of the doubt. Presentation is just overall how well the ride runs, from operations, loose article policy, its appearance to guests, signage, that kind of thing. I personally love the look of RMC coasters. This one especially is unique because it's 200 plus feet and does not have the truss style lift. This thing almost always runs 3 trains, although dispatch times can vary based on the day you go, but overall the throughput I would say is satisfactory. It's just this ride's popularity that sometimes gives it a really long line. And one thing that they did add after it opened that I really appreciate is the free double-sided lockers for loose article policy. This is great for both safety, operations, and overall is just a really big win for the guests visiting Cedar Point and riding this attraction. However, because the area can become a little bit uncleanly and the operations are a little bit inconsistent, I can't put presentation any higher than that. I don't really love laterals that much, but Steel Vengeance does have a couple okay moments of laterals. The top hat specifically is an unbanked moment where you're turning to the right, so you get some there. Some of the in-structure maneuvers towards the end and the high bank turn you also get a little. However, Steel Vengeance definitely is not a ride that excels in its laterals, so I'm putting it at average or maybe slightly above. Moving into the next priority group, we have the trains. As I previously said, I'm a big fan of the RMC swing axle trains. I think they're rather comfortable, the airtime is comfortable, they ride great, and overall, I just think they're one of the best trains in the game, and yes, I know, that is somewhat of a hot take. Moving on to propulsion, Steel Vengeance just has a basic chain lift going up a 45-degree incline, and it is so loud and not particularly fast, so I'm scoring propulsion pretty poorly for Steel Vengeance. Moving on to positives, this is definitely a weak point in Steel Vengeance from a layout perspective. I just don't happen to care about it too much. The ride never goes over 4G's maximum, and the only real sustained moment of positives is between the outer bank turn and the top hat, and even that is only at 3Gs. So you will not be graying out on this from positives, I guarantee you that. Moving on to the next category group, we have inversions. As I have stated many times going over the layout, I'm a big fan of the RMC 0G rolls. I'm just not a huge fan of the last one on this one. I also love the cutback / stall, so inversions on this for Steel Vengeance will get an above average grade for me. It also feels like 4 inversions was the perfect amount on this ride to keep it airtime focused, but also mix it up with some inversions, so I'm going to give it some credit for that as well. Now we have a little bit of a controversial one. We have variety. This ride, without a doubt, is airtime focused, but I feel like the mix of inversions and maneuvers at certain points of the ride does just enough to break up some consecutive airtime moments and make it not feel too repetitive, at least to me. Some people really will not like the 6-tuple hill finale at the end because of repetition, but for me, coming off of an inversion and 2 maneuvers right before that, I just love that finale and just love the pop, 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 pop of the airtime moment, and to me, it does not get repetitive. So, I'm scoring variety above average. Moving on to maneuvers, Steel Vengeance only has 3. However, I would say the Stangle Dive and Overbank are good, with the Stangle Dive definitely being more of a standout moment. High bank turn, element number 7, is definitely just filler, then the overbank is somewhere between the Stangle Dive and the high bank turn. These maneuvers do get lost in the sea of airtime that is this roller coaster, but for what they are, I think they do a fine job. Maybe one more maneuver would have been desirable, but for me, Steel Vengeance's maneuvers are slightly below average. Now we're really getting into some more high priority stuff. First up we have smoothness. I have ridden Steel Vengeance in both 2019 and 2024, with more rides coming up in August of 2025. And all of my rides have been absolutely glass smooth. The iBox mixed with the swing axle trains is just one of the smoothest combinations out there, and I have not ridden one that is any sort of roughness whatsoever. So for me, this one gets a perfect score on smoothness. Moving on to pacing, I think this is something that Steel Vengeance does very well. Just looking at the speed it takes those last 6 bunny hills before the brakes is a testament to how well it rips through that layout. Especially in the structure when you're on your 3rd lap and you feel like you should be losing speed, it still feels like you get to maintain a lot of speed through all those maneuvers, inversions, and airtime moments. Where I will dock it for pacing is the mid-course brake run, and the elevated section after the first 0G roll can be a little sluggish. So that knocks it down a little bit, but otherwise, Steel Vengeance's pacing is well above average. Moving on to density, Steel Vengeance absolutely excels in density. It is always doing something, whether it be airtime, inversion, or maneuver. It does not let up. The mid-course brake run is your only chance to breathe. I'm giving Steel Vengeance a near perfect density score. Finally, we have the 3 categories that I care the most about. First up, Steel Vengeance's duration in both number of elements and D to B. Steel Vengeance has the most number of elements of any coaster that I have ever ridden, and its D to B of 81.44 is well above average. However, there are rides out there that do have a longer D to B, so for that, I'll give Steel Vengeance a near but not quite perfect score. Moving on to airtime strength, and this one has been a mixed bag for reviewers of Steel Vengeance. But you guys can see the data I presented, that even the small ejector pops reach a very high negative G value. So with those delivering and the 3 very sustained ejector moments that we get in the front of the ride, I have no choice but to give Steel Vengeance once again a near perfect score. I will dock it a smidge just because there are rides out there that solely focused on just having a couple really strong ejector moments, and Steel Vengeance can't really hold up compared to them, so that's why the marker is where it is in this case. And then finally, the thing Steel Vengeance does best, airtime quantity. It currently holds the world record for most airtime on a roller coaster, and while my findings don't exactly agree with that number, 21 airtime moments and 17.22 seconds of under 0G is just absolutely insane and does not warrant anything other than a perfect score. Just looking at the 6 leftmost cards, Steel Vengeance performs spectacularly in the most important areas for me. Overall, Steel Vengeance is an airtime focused ride, but does enough other things well to be one of the premier roller coasters on the planet. Just to quickly recap, this is a glass smooth, airtime focused roller coaster that does so many things super well. As of August 2025, it is ranked the best roller coaster in the Captain Coaster database, and I agree with it, as Steel Vengeance is currently ranked my number 1 overall roller coaster out of my 220 credits. This will conclude CoasterGuy23 review number 1. If you don't want to have to wait for all my reviews to come out to view my current list of roller coasters, find me on CaptainCoaster.com, username CoasterGuy23. To view my coaster count, parks visited, ride stats, and a bunch of other stuff, friend me on LogRide, also at CoasterGuy23. To view or download any of my RideForce files, visit my profile on RideForce's DB, also at CoasterGuy23. Thank you guys all for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.